My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. I sat in my car outside the Riverside Country Club, watching through rain-streaked windows as warm lights spilled from the ballroom entrance. Inside, my family was celebrating what they called the biggest moment in our family's history. Outside, in the dark, I whispered into my phone's voice recorder. They didn't just exclude me. They tried to erase me. The photo had appeared on Instagram 20 minutes ago. My sister Melissa's account, public for everyone to see. The entire family gathered in formal attire, champagne glasses raised, surrounding my grandmother, Eleanor, at the center. 43 people. I counted them twice. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't seen in years. Even my father's estranged brother flew in from Seattle. Everyone was there, everyone except me. But that wasn't the part that made my stomach drop. It was the arrangement. They'd posed in 3 careful rows, professional photographer directing them, and there, in the second row, between my brother James and my cousin Michelle, was a space, not an accidental gap, a deliberate, person-sized, empty space, as if they'd photoshopped me out, except I was never there to begin with. My phone buzzed. A text from my lawyer, Patricia. Do not go inside alone. I'm 10 minutes away. Wait for me. Another buzz. A forwarded email with a PDF attachment. The subject line. Urgent, trust document status. I opened it with trembling fingers. At the top of the first page, stamped in red ink, void. I stared at that word until it blurred. This was my grandmother's trust revision, the one she'd told me about 3 months ago in the hospital, when she'd squeezed my hand and said, "You're the only one who visited every day, Sarah. The only one who actually cared." The document that made me co-trustee alongside my father. The document that required my signature for any major family financial decisions. The document they'd apparently decided to void. Through the rain. I watched the valet parking attendants joking with each other. One of them glanced at my 10-year-old Honda, then looked away. I didn't belong here. That message had been delivered in 1,000 small ways over the years. But tonight, it was written in formal calligraphy, on place cards I'd never see. Another text, this time from my cousin Rachel, the only one who'd ever been honest with me. "Sarah, where are you? Aunt Linda is saying you declined to attend for personal reasons." That's bullshit. What's really happening? I didn't answer. How could I explain something I was still trying to understand? The windshield wipers scraped across the glass with a rhythmic squeak. Inside that ballroom, they were probably making toasts now. Talking about family legacy, about staying together, about the importance of blood. My father would be standing next to grandmother Eleanor, his hand on her shoulder, playing the devoted son he'd never actually been. My mother would be smiling her practiced smile, the one that never reached her eyes, smoothing over any awkwardness with her gift for small talk. Melissa would be filming everything for social media, curating our family's image one filtered photo at a time. And somewhere in that room, on a mahogany table beneath crystal chandeliers, was the real reason I'd been excluded. A stack of papers, a notary, a plan that required my absence. My phone buzzed again. "Patricia. Sarah, do you know what tonight actually is?" I typed back. "Grandmother's 85th birthday party. Family reunion." That's what the invitation said. Then I paused. The invitation I never received. 3 dots appeared as Patricia typed. "It's not just a party. Check the email I sent you 5 minutes ago." The venue coordinator forwarded me the event contract. Look at section 7. I scrolled through my emails with shaking hands. Found it. The contract between Riverside Country Club and the Eleanor Thornton Family Trust. I scanned down to section 7. Ancillary services. Notary public on site. Document signing ceremony. Trust restructuring announcement. The words swam on the screen. Document signing, trust restructuring. This wasn't a birthday party. This was a legal proceeding disguised as a celebration. They needed you not to be here. Patricia's next message read, "Whatever they're signing requires the absence of a co-trustee." I looked up at the building. Warm light, laughter probably echoing off those walls, the clink of silverware on china. My family was inside, celebrating. But they weren't celebrating grandmother's birthday. They were celebrating something else, something that required me to be erased from the picture. Through the rain, I saw the entrance doors open. A figure emerged, checking their phone, looking around. My brother James. He was searching for something, or someone. Me? Had someone told them I was here? Patricia's car pulled into the lot, headlights cutting through the rain. She parked next to me, rolled down her window. "Don't move yet. We wait. We watch. We need to know exactly what they're doing before we act." "They're restructuring the trust," I said, my voice hollow. "Grandmother told me I was co-trustee. She made me promise I'd protect it from them." Patricia's expression hardened. "Did she tell you why she chose you?" I thought back to that hospital room, the smell of antiseptic and roses, grandmother's papery hand gripping mine, her voice weak but fierce. "They only come when they want something, Sarah. You came because you love me. That's why I'm trusting you with everything." "She said they only visit when they want something," I whispered. "Then tonight," Patricia said, "they want something big. Big enough to orchestrate an entire event just to keep you away." She pulled out her laptop. "Now we figure out what it is, and we figure out what they forgot you have." I stared at my phone screen, at that family photo with its deliberate empty space, at the word void, stamped across the trust document, at my brother's silhouette, still standing in the rain, searching. They thought I was nothing. They thought I'd accept this exclusion like I'd accepted all the others. They thought I'd stay away. They were wrong. I'd been 23 when I first understood my role in the family. Not the youngest, not the oldest, not the smartest or the prettiest. I was the utility player, the one who showed up when needed and disappeared when convenient. The Thornton family operated like a corporation, and I'd been studying its structure my entire adult life without realizing I was documenting my own marginalization. At the top sat grandmother Eleanor, the matriarch whose approval was the only currency that mattered. Beneath her, my father Richard controlled access to her like a medieval gatekeeper. He decided who got invited to Sunday dinners. He filtered phone calls. He managed the narrative. Then there was Melissa, the golden child. My older sister had mastered the art of being everything our family valued. Beautiful, charming, married to a surgeon, mother of 2 photogenic children. She'd graduated from Yale. She volunteered at the right charities. She wore pearls to breakfast. Every family photo featured her at the center, laughing at just the right moment, her hand casually touching grandmother's arm in that possessive way that said, "This is mine." My mother Barbara was the enabler. Her favorite phrase was, "Keep the peace." When my father excluded me from family business discussions, she'd say, "You know how your father is. Don't make waves." When Melissa took credit for my work, she'd say, "She needs this right now. Be the bigger person." When I complained about being left out, she'd sigh and say, "Family is complicated, Sarah. Sometimes we have to sacrifice for love." I'd been sacrificing for 32 years. Tonight, I was done. Patricia's laptop glowed in the darkness of her car. She'd pulled up the original trust document, the one filed 3 months ago when grandmother Eleanor first restructured her estate. "Look at this," Patricia said, pointing to section 4. Co-trustees: Richard Michael Thornton and Sarah Elizabeth Thornton. Equal authority. Both signatures required for any distribution over $50,000 or any structural changes to the trust. I never signed anything agreeing to be removed, I said. Exactly. Which means if they're inside signing something different, it's either fraudulent or they found a legal loophole. She clicked through to another document. This is interesting. 2 weeks ago, someone filed a petition for an emergency trust modification. The petitioner is listed as Richard Thornton. The grounds are listed as co-trustee incapacity. The words hit me like ice water. Incapacity? They're claiming I'm mentally incompetent? Not yet. That's what tonight is about. If they can get enough family members to sign affidavits claiming you've been behaving erratically, showing signs of mental instability, they can petition the court to remove you as co-trustee. Patricia's face was grim. This isn't just about money, Sarah. This is about declaring you unfit. I thought about the past 3 months, the small cruelties that hadn't made sense at the time. My father insisting I seemed stressed and suggesting I see a therapist. Melissa posting concerned messages on social media about family members struggling with mental health. My mother's worried phone calls asking if I was taking care of myself. They'd been building a case, planting seeds, creating a narrative of instability that they could harvest tonight in front of witnesses. The real question, Patricia continued, is why now? Why go through this elaborate setup? I knew the answer. I'd known since that day in the hospital when Grandmother Eleanor had held my hand and told me the truth. She's changing the primary beneficiary structure. She told me she was leaving the beach house to me, the one in Martha's vineyard. Patricia's eyebrows rose. That house is worth $4 million. I stared at the rain. It's been in the family for 3 generations. My father assumed it would go to him. Melissa's already told her interior designer friends she's going to renovate it. So if they remove you as co-trustee and establish that you're mentally unfit, they can contest any bequest to you on the grounds that Eleanor was unduly influenced or you manipulated her during a vulnerable time. They're not just excluding me from the party, I said slowly. They're excluding me from my inheritance, from my grandmother's final wishes, from everything. My phone buzzed. A text from my Aunt Linda, my father's sister, the family's chief gossip and social enforcer. Sarah, your absence tonight is very hurtful to your grandmother. She keeps asking about you. Can't you put aside your issues for one evening? I showed the message to Patricia. She snorted. Classic manipulation. Make it about your grandmother's feelings instead of their actions. But something about the message bothered me. I opened Instagram again, scrolled to that family photo, zoomed in on Grandmother Eleanor's face. She wasn't smiling. While everyone around her beamed at the camera, she looked confused, almost lost. Patricia, I said slowly, does Grandmother know I wasn't invited? What do you mean? Look at her face in this photo. She looks like she's wondering where someone is. I pulled up another photo Melissa had posted, this one from inside the ballroom. Grandmother Eleanor sat at the head table, my father and Melissa on either side of her. She was looking toward the entrance, her hand raised as if gesturing to someone. The caption read, Grandma Eleanor holding court at her big celebration. But I saw something different. I saw a woman looking for someone who wasn't there. A woman who maybe didn't know I'd been deliberately excluded. They told her I declined to come, I said. They told everyone I declined. That's why Rachel texted asking why I wasn't there. They created a story where I'm the one who chose not to show up. Patricia leaned back in her seat. That's actually brilliant. Evil, but brilliant. If you show up now claiming you weren't invited, it's your word against 43 people who all believe you simply didn't want to be here. I have proof, I said, pulling up my email. Or rather, I have absence of proof. No invitation in my email, no text, no phone call. I can show I was never... I stopped, scrolled through my inbox carefully, then my deleted folder, then my spam folder. There, in spam, was an email from 3 weeks ago. Sender, Melissa Thornton. Subject, Eleanor's 85th birthday celebration. You're invited? I clicked it. The email loaded. A beautiful custom design with calligraphy font and photos of grandmother Eleanor. All the details about tonight's event. Date, time, location, dress code. And at the bottom, one sentence I'd missed. Please RSVP by April 15th, or we'll assume you cannot attend. Today was April 30th. They knew I used spam filters, I whispered. Melissa knew that email would go straight to spam because I'd filtered her promotional emails after she started her lifestyle blog. Patricia whistled low. Plausible deniability. They sent the invite. Not their fault you didn't see it. Not their fault you didn't RSVP. Everything's been choreographed, I said. The missing invitation that wasn't really missing. The concerned social media posts about my mental health. The emergency trust modification petition. Tonight's signing ceremony while I'm conveniently absent. They didn't just plan to exclude you from the party, Patricia said. They planned to exclude you from everything. And they needed you to not show up voluntarily so it would look like your choice. Through the rain-streaked windshield, I watched more family members arriving. My Uncle Thomas, my cousin David, my father's business partner. All of them, dressed formally, all of them welcomed with hugs and smiles, all of them believing I simply hadn't cared enough to attend my own grandmother's milestone birthday. We need to go inside, I said. Not yet. Patricia was typing rapidly on her laptop. First, we need to know exactly what they're signing. I need 5 more minutes to access the venue coordinator's file. We don't have 5 minutes. What if they've already signed? Then we file a fraud claim tomorrow. But if we go in there now without knowing what we're up against, we're playing into their narrative. You show up late, emotional, making a scene at your grandmother's party. It confirms everything they've said about you being unstable. She was right. I knew she was right. But sitting in that dark parking lot while my family erased me felt like drowning in slow motion. My phone buzzed again. This time, Rachel. Okay, something is definitely wrong. They just made an announcement that you're dealing with personal matters and can't be here. Your dad literally just said you send your love. Sarah, what the hell is happening? I texted back. Did they say anything about signing documents? 3 dots. Then, yeah. Your dad just announced they're about to do an official trust ceremony thing. Everyone's moving into the library room. He said it's a formality to clarify grandmother's wishes and ensure family harmony. Do you want me to film it? Yes, I typed. Film everything. Don't let them see you doing it. Patricia looked up from her laptop. Got it. The signing ceremony is scheduled for 8:30. They're restructuring the trust to remove you as co-trustee and appointing a 3-person board instead. Your father, Melissa, and your Uncle Thomas. They can't do that without my signature. They can if they claim you're incapacitated or if they get a court order. And look at this. She turned the laptop screen. The petition for emergency modification was filed yesterday. The hearing is scheduled for Monday morning at 9 a.m. But if they can get Eleanor to sign the new structure tonight in front of witnesses, they're creating a fait accompli. The judge sees that Eleanor clearly wanted this change, that the whole family agreed, and that you were the only objection. I wasn't the only objection, I said. I wasn't even given the chance to object. Which is why we're going inside, but not through the front door. Patricia pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the venue coordinator. We're going to need her cooperation." "And Sarah? When we walk in there, you need to be calm. Ice cold. No emotion. You're not the crazy excluded daughter. You're the co-trustee protecting your grandmother's legal interests." "I don't feel calm." "You don't have to feel it. You just have to perform it." She squeezed my shoulder. "They built a story where you don't belong. We're about to show them you're the only one who does." At 8:27 p.m., I took a deep breath and reached for the door handle. The rain had stopped. The night air smelled like wet asphalt and expensive perfume drifting from the ballroom. Inside that building, my family was gathering to erase me from their history. I was about to show them that some people don't erase easily. The venue coordinator met us at the service entrance. A nervous woman in her 40s named Jennifer, who kept glancing over her shoulder. "I shouldn't be doing this," she whispered. "If they find out I let you in." "They won't," Patricia said firmly. "You're simply allowing a named co-trustee access to a legal proceeding she's required to attend. If anything, you'd be liable for preventing her attendance." Jennifer's eyes darted between us. "Mr. Thornton was very specific. He said Sarah wasn't coming. He had me remove her name from the seating chart last week." "Did he say why?" I asked. "He said—" Jennifer hesitated. "He said you were struggling with some personal issues, and the family felt it would be better if you sat this one out. He was very charming about it. Said he was trying to protect you from stress." The lie was so smooth, so perfectly crafted. My father had decades of practice making himself sound reasonable while doing unreasonable things. "Jennifer," Patricia said, pulling out her phone. "I'm recording this conversation with your consent. Can you confirm that Sarah Thornton was initially on the guest list for this event?" Jennifer nodded slowly. "Yes. She was on the original list from 3 months ago when Mrs. Eleanor first booked the venue. Then Mr. Richard called 2 weeks ago and said to remove her. He said she'd declined to attend." "Did he provide that in writing?" "No. Just a phone call." "And did anyone from Sarah's side confirm she wouldn't be attending?" "No, Jennifer trailed off, understanding dawning on her face. "Oh God, he lied to me." "He lied to everyone," I said, "including my grandmother. Can you get us to the library room without anyone seeing us?" Jennifer bit her lip, then nodded. "Follow me. Stay quiet. If anyone asks, you're with the catering staff." We moved through the service corridors of Riverside Country Club, past industrial kitchens and storage rooms, the distant sound of classical music and laughter growing louder. Jennifer stopped at a door marked Library Private Event. She pulled out a key card. "The ceremony starts at 8:30. It's 8:29 now. They're probably all inside already." She swiped the card. "There's a small observation alcove at the back of the room. It's behind the bookshelves. You can see everything, but they won't notice you unless they look directly at the corner." "Thank you," I said. "Your grandmother is a kind woman," Jennifer said quietly. "She tipped every staff member tonight personally, shook our hands, asked about our families. She doesn't deserve whatever this is." The door clicked open. Patricia went first, moving silently across thick carpet. I followed, my heart hammering so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. The library was exactly what you'd expect from a country club in Connecticut. Leather chairs, mahogany panels, books that probably cost more than my car. And at the center, a large table with papers spread across it. We reached the alcove just as my father's voice rang out. "If everyone could please take a seat. We're ready to begin the official portion of the evening." I peered through the gap in the bookshelves. The entire family was there. 43 people arranged in chairs facing the table. Grandmother Eleanor sat at the head, looking small and confused. My father stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. Melissa sat on her other side, already positioning herself in the power seat. A notary public stood behind the table, a middle-aged woman with a professional smile, her stamp and seal at the ready. "Thank you all for being here tonight," my father began. His voice was warm, practiced, the voice he used when closing business deals. "We're gathered not just to celebrate Mother's 85th birthday, but to ensure her legacy is protected and her wishes are clearly documented." I saw several relatives shifting uncomfortably. My Uncle Thomas, my father's younger brother, was frowning. My cousin Rachel had her phone out, partially hidden in her lap, filming just as I'd asked her to. "As you all know," my father continued, "Mother established a trust 3 months ago during her recovery from pneumonia. At the time, she was under significant stress and medication. She made certain decisions that, in hindsight, may not have reflected her true wishes." My grandmother's head turned toward him. She looked confused. "Richard, what are you—" "It's all right, Mother," Melissa said smoothly, patting her hand. "We're just clarifying things, making sure everything is exactly how you want it." "The original trust structure named 2 co-trustees," my father said, his tone shifting slightly, becoming more formal. "Myself and my daughter Sarah. However, Sarah has been dealing with significant personal challenges recently. Depression, anxiety, instability. We've all been very worried about her." Several heads nodded. My Aunt Linda murmured, "Such a shame." My mother sat in the front row, staring at her hands. For Sarah's own well-being and to protect Mother's assets from any unfortunate decisions, we're proposing a modified trust structure. A 3-person trustee board consisting of myself, Melissa, and Thomas. This provides better oversight, more balanced decision-making, and removes the burden from Sarah's shoulders. "Did Sarah agree to this?" The voice came from the back. My Uncle Thomas, standing up. "Because from what I understand, you can't remove a co-trustee without her consent or a court order." My father's smile didn't waver. "Sarah has been informed. She chose not to attend tonight, which I think speaks to her own recognition that this responsibility is too much for her right now." "Bullshit." Rachel stood up, her phone now openly recording. "I texted Sarah 20 minutes ago. She had no idea this was even happening. She thought tonight was just a birthday party." The room erupted. Multiple conversations started at once. My father's face darkened. Melissa lunged for Rachel's phone. "Put that away. This is a private family matter." "It's a legal proceeding with a notary present," Rachel shot back. "That makes it official record. And you're lying about Sarah." "Where is Sarah?" Grandmother Eleanor's voice cut through the chaos. It was stronger than I'd heard it in months, sharp with authority. "Richard, where is your daughter? Why isn't she here?" "Mother, she didn't want to come. She's been very difficult lately." "I'm right here, Grandmother." I stepped out of the alcove. The room went silent. 43 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I saw shock, confusion, anger, fear. My father's face went white. Melissa's mouth fell open. My mother closed her eyes as if she could make me disappear by not looking. "I'm here," I said, again walking forward calmly, Patricia beside me. "I'm here because I'm co-trustee of your estate, Grandmother, and because no one actually invited me tonight. They just told everyone I declined." "That's not true," my father said quickly. "We sent you an invitation. You never responded." "You sent an invitation to my spam folder 3 weeks ago," I corrected, after you'd already told the venue coordinator to remove my name from the seating chart, after you'd filed an emergency petition to have me removed as co-trustee on grounds of mental incapacity. After you'd spent months creating a false narrative about my mental health. I reached the table, placed my hands flat on the documents they were about to sign. Did anyone in this room actually speak to me about attending tonight? Anyone? Silence. Not a single hand raised. Did grandmother know I wasn't coming? More silence. Then grandmother Eleanor spoke, her voice trembling. Richard told me you were sick. That you were in the hospital. That you didn't want me to worry. I'm not sick, I said, looking at my father. I was never sick. I was excluded. Deliberately. Systematically. Because you needed me not to be here for this signing. Patricia stepped forward, pulling documents from her briefcase. My name is Patricia Chen. I'm Ms. Thornton's attorney, and I'm here to inform everyone present that any signatures on trust modification documents tonight would be legally invalid without the consent of all current trustees. That includes Sarah Thornton. This is ridiculous, Melissa said, but her voice wavered. We're trying to protect grandmother's interests. By lying about why I'm not here. I looked around the room. By creating a false narrative about my mental health. By filing legal petitions without telling me. By restructuring a trust specifically designed to require 2 signatures. You don't understand the complexity, my father started. I understand perfectly, I interrupted. I understand that 3 months ago, grandmother told you she was leaving me the Martha's Vineyard house. I understand that you assumed it would go to you. I understand that you couldn't contest her wishes while she was alive. So you decided to remove me as co-trustee first. If I'm declared mentally unfit, you can argue I manipulated her during her illness. You can contest the bequest. You can keep the house. The room was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. Several relatives looked uncomfortable now, realizing they'd been brought here as witnesses to something they didn't fully understand. This is absurd, my father said. But he was sweating now. Mother is making these changes of her own free will. Then let her say so, I said. I turned to my grandmother. Did you want to remove me as co-trustee? Grandmother Eleanor looked at me. Really looked at me. Her eyes were clear, sharp, the way they'd been in the hospital when she'd held my hand and made me promise to protect her wishes. No, she said quietly. I chose Sarah because she was the only one who visited me every day when I was sick. The only one who came without asking for anything. I chose her because I trust her. Mother, you're confused, my father began. I'm not confused, Richard. Her voice strengthened. And I didn't authorize any of this. I thought tonight was just a birthday party. The crack in my father's facade was visible now. His carefully constructed plan was collapsing, and everyone could see it. Grandmother, I said gently, did you want the trust structure changed? No. Did you ask anyone to file papers to remove me as co-trustee? No. I looked at the notary, who was now standing very still, clearly understanding she'd been brought here under false pretenses. I think we're done here, I said. Patricia gathered the unsigned documents. These will be submitted to the court as evidence of attempted fraud. I'll also be filing a motion to dismiss the emergency modification petition. You can't do this, Melissa said, her voice rising. We're family. You're tearing the family apart. No, I said. You did that when you tried to erase me. I helped grandmother Eleanor stand. She was steady on her feet, stronger than she'd appeared moments ago. She looked around at her family, at the faces of people who'd been about to witness what they thought was her wishes being honored. Sarah is taking me home, she announced. This party's over. As we walked toward the door, Rachel started a slow clap. A few others joined her, not everyone, but enough. My father stood at the table, surrounded by unsigned papers, his perfect plan demolished. Melissa was already on her phone, probably deleting social media posts. My mother was crying quietly. I didn't look back. I'd spent 32 years looking back, hoping they'd see me, hoping they'd include me. Tonight, I'd finally learned what I should have known all along. Some families don't exclude you because you're wrong. They exclude you because you disrupt the story they're selling. And when you refuse to stay gone, when you show up and speak the truth, the story falls apart. They'd wanted me erased. Instead, I'd revealed what they really were. The ride back to Grandmother Eleanor's house was quiet. She sat in the passenger seat of my Honda, her formal dress rustling with each turn, her hands folded in her lap. Patricia followed in her own car, documenting everything, already preparing the legal counteroffensive. In my rearview mirror, I could see the lights of Riverside Country Club fading behind us. "I'm sorry," Grandmother Eleanor said finally. Her voice was soft, tired. "I'm so sorry, Sarah. You have nothing to apologize for. I should have known. I should have seen what they were doing." She turned to look at me. In the dashboard light, her face looked older than her 85 years. "When did it start? When did my family become people I don't recognize?" I thought about that question. The truth was, they'd always been this way. I'd just been too young, too hopeful, too desperate for belonging to see it clearly. "I think they showed you who they were tonight, Grandmother. For the first time without the pretense. Richard is my son. I raised him to be better than this." "You raised him to value success," I said gently. "He valued it too much. So much that he forgot about everything else." We pulled into her driveway, a modest colonial in a quiet neighborhood. Not the Martha's Vineyard house that everyone was fighting over. This was her real home, the one she'd shared with my grandfather for 40 years before his death. The porch light was on. She must have left it burning before she left for the party, expecting to come home to celebrate, not to escape. Patricia helped me get Grandmother inside. We settled her in the living room, made tea, and sat in the familiar space filled with family photos. I couldn't help noticing that most of the recent photos featured just me and Grandmother. My visits, our Sunday afternoon walks, the birthday cake I'd baked her last year. The evidence of who actually cared had been on these walls the whole time. My phone started buzzing at 9:47 p.m. First, my father, then Melissa, then my mother, then Aunt Linda, then my Uncle Thomas. The calls came in a cascade, each voicemail building on the last, creating a narrative I could already predict without listening. Patricia picked up my phone, put it on speaker, and played the first message. My father's voice, tight with anger. "Sarah, what you did tonight was unconscionable. You humiliated your entire family, upset your grandmother, and destroyed what should have been a beautiful celebration. I don't know what Patricia told you, but you've been manipulated. We can fix this. Call me back immediately." Delete. Next message. Melissa's voice, syrupy sweet, with an undertone of threat. "Hey, sis. Wow, that was quite a performance. You really had everyone convinced you were the victim. Very impressive. But you and I both know the truth. You've always been jealous of me, and now you're using Grandma to get attention. This isn't over. Call me back so we can talk about this like adults." Delete. My mother's message was just crying. No words, just tears. The sound of her being caught between her husband and her daughter, choosing silence because choosing a side would cost her something. Delete. Then Aunt Linda, her voice dripping with concern. Sarah, sweetie, I don't know what's going on with you, but you're clearly not well. The way you barged into that party, making wild accusations, disrupting a sacred family moment. Your father is right. You need help. Professional help. Please, for your own sake, get yourself checked into somewhere. We all love you, but you're scaring us. I looked at Patricia. They're creating the narrative right now, making me the villain. Of course they are, Patricia said, pulling out her laptop. But we have something they don't: documentation, evidence, and most importantly, we have your grandmother's clear statement that she didn't authorize any of this. Grandmother Eleanor was shaking her head, listening to the messages. Linda always was good at making people doubt themselves. She could convince you the sky was green if it suited her purposes. The messages kept coming. 37 in the first hour, each one adding another layer to the story they were building. I was mentally unstable. I was manipulating grandmother. I was jealous of Melissa. I was bitter about something undefined. I was the problem. They're going to smear you, Patricia said, not unkindly. On social media, to friends, to other family members. They're going to try to isolate you, make you doubt yourself, convince everyone that tonight was your breakdown rather than their exposure. I know. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the years of small exclusions, the times my accomplishments were minimized while Melissa's were celebrated, the way my father would introduce Melissa as my daughter, the Yale graduate, and me as simply my other daughter, the way my mother would suggest I was too sensitive whenever I pointed out unfair treatment. I'd been preparing for this my entire life without knowing it. Yes, I said, I'm prepared. My phone buzzed with a text. Rachel. Sarah, holy shit. Are you okay? My mom is losing it. She's calling everyone saying you've had a psychotic break. I told her she was full of shit and now she won't talk to me either. I recorded everything. Want me to post it? I texted back. Not yet. Save all footage. Don't engage with anyone about it. They're going to pressure you. Already happening. Melissa texted me saying I betrayed the family trust. LOL. At least I had one ally, even if it was just my 26-year-old cousin with a smartphone and a conscience. Patricia was typing rapidly on her laptop. I'm drafting a cease and desist letter to your father. If he continues to spread false information about your mental health, we'll pursue defamation charges. I'm also filing an emergency motion for Monday morning to get the fraudulent trust modification petition dismissed and to request sanctions against their attorney for filing without proper notice to all interested parties. What happens Monday? We go to court. Your father has a hearing scheduled for 9 a.m. He thinks he's going to waltz in, present his petition, and get you removed as co-trustee. Instead, he's going to walk into a formal complaint about attempted fraud, elder manipulation, and filing false documents. Grandmother Eleanor set down her teacup. I want to be there, at the court hearing. Grandmother, you don't have to. I want to be there, she repeated firmly. I want that judge to hear from me directly that I never authorized any changes, that I specifically chose you as co-trustee, that my son lied about my wishes. Patricia nodded. That would be very helpful, Mrs. Eleanor. Your testimony would be the strongest evidence we have. Then it's settled. She stood up, suddenly looking more energized than she had all evening. But first, Sarah, I need you to do something for me. Anything. I need you to go to my safe deposit box tomorrow morning. The key is upstairs in my jewelry box. Inside the box is a sealed envelope addressed to you. I put it there 3 months ago, right after I revised the trust. I thought I was being paranoid. Thought maybe I was imagining things. She shook her head. I should have trusted my instincts. What's in the envelope? Evidence, documentation, Recordings of conversations. Every time Richard or Melissa called me over the past 3 months, I recorded it on my phone. Your grandfather taught me that. He said, "Eleanor, when people show you who they are, believe them. And when they lie, have proof." Patricia sat forward. "Mrs. Eleanor, are you saying you have recordings of your son discussing removing Sarah as co-trustee?" "I have recordings of my son telling me Sarah was mentally unstable. I have recordings of Melissa explaining how they could contest the Martha's Vineyard bequest if they could prove Sarah influenced me while I was sick. Have recordings of Linda suggesting I should be evaluated for competency because choosing Sarah over Richard as co-trustee was clearly a sign I was losing my faculties." The room went silent. Then Patricia smiled. It was a sharp, predatory smile. "Mrs. Eleanor, you're my new favorite client." "I may be old," Grandmother said, "but I'm not senile, and I didn't survive 85 years by being stupid." I knew something was wrong when Richard started asking so many questions about the trust structure, when he started insisting I needed to reconsider, when he stopped asking about me and only asked about the estate. So I started recording. "How many recordings?" I asked. 14 calls. 4 in-person visits that I recorded on my phone sitting on the coffee table. They never noticed. Why would they? I'm just a confused old woman, right? Her voice was bitter. That's what they wanted me to be. That's what would have made this easier for them. My phone buzzed again. This time, a call from my mother. I looked at the screen, watched it ring. Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You going to answer?" I thought about all the times my mother had asked me to keep the peace. All the times she'd sided with my father because it was easier. All the times she'd watched me be minimized and said nothing. I thought about her sitting in that courtroom tonight, eyes closed, wishing me away. "No," I said. "If she wants to talk to me, she can say what she needs to say in a voicemail, where I can document it." The call went to voicemail. We waited. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. I played it on speaker. My mother's voice, shaking. "Sarah, please. You're tearing this family apart. Your father is devastated. Melissa is in tears. Everyone is so upset. Can't you just apologize? Tell them you were overwhelmed. Tell them you made a mistake. We can fix this. We can all move forward if you just admit you were wrong." Admit I was wrong. For being excluded, for being lied about, for protecting my grandmother's wishes, for refusing to disappear. "They're never going to see it," Grandmother Eleanor said quietly. "They're never going to understand what they did wrong. Because in their minds, you're the problem. You always have been." "Why?" I asked. The question I'd been carrying for 32 years. Why do they hate me so much? "They don't hate you," she said. "They fear you. You're the only one who tells the truth. The only one who doesn't play along with their games. The only one who couldn't be bought or manipulated into their perfect family picture. That makes you dangerous." Patricia closed her laptop. "Sarah, I need to be very clear about what's coming. When we file these motions Monday morning, when we present the recordings, when we expose what they tried to do, there's no going back. Your relationship with your father, with Melissa, maybe even with your mother, it's going to be permanently damaged. They will never forgive you for this. You will never be welcomed back into that family fold." I looked at the photos on Grandmother's walls, my solitary visits, my quiet care, my invisible love that no one had valued until tonight when they realized it came with legal authority. "They never welcomed me in the first place," I said. "I was just too desperate to see it." At midnight, we finally left Grandmother Eleanor's house. She was settled in her bedroom, door locked at Patricia's insistence, her phone on the nightstand with Patricia's number on speed dial. Patricia had made it clear. If anyone from the family showed up, don't open the door. Don't engage. Call the lawyer first. As I drove home through empty streets, my phone continued buzzing with messages. I turned off notifications, but I could see the count climbing. 53 missed calls, 97 text messages. My family was in full crisis mode, trying to rewrite tonight's story before the truth could settle. But they'd forgotten something important. They'd forgotten that I'd been watching them my entire life, learning their patterns, understanding their tactics. They'd trained me to be invisible, and invisible people see everything. Tomorrow, I would go to that safe deposit box. I would retrieve my grandmother's evidence. And Monday morning, I would walk into that courthouse with documentation they didn't know existed. They'd tried to erase me from one family moment. I was about to show them exactly what that erasure would cost. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies and a bone-deep exhaustion that 3 cups of coffee couldn't touch. I'd slept maybe 2 hours, my mind replaying the confrontation, analyzing every word, every reaction. My phone had finally gone silent around 3 a.m., but the notification count had reached biblical proportions. 214 text messages, 87 missed calls, and 17 voicemails I hadn't listened to. Patricia met me at the bank at 9 a.m. sharp. We stood in the quiet marble lobby of First National, waiting for the safe deposit box specialist. Patricia looked remarkably put together for someone who'd worked until 2 a.m. preparing emergency motions. I probably looked like I'd been hit by a truck. "How many lawyers does your father have calling you?" I asked. 3 so far, all very polite, all suggesting we should resolve this privately, all implying there might be consequences if we proceed publicly. Patricia smiled. I told them we'll see them in court Monday morning. The bank specialist, a middle-aged woman named Mrs. Chen, led us to the vault. My hands were shaking as I inserted the key grandmother Eleanor had given me. Inside the long metal box was a single manila envelope, thick and sealed with tape. My name was written across it in my grandmother's elegant cursive. "Can I open this here?" I asked Mrs. Chen. "You can, though the viewing room is more private if you'd prefer." We moved to a small room with a table and 2 chairs. Patricia closed the door. I sat down and stared at the envelope, suddenly afraid of what it might contain. Evidence was one thing. Listening to my family plot against me in their own words was something else entirely. "Take your time," Patricia said. I broke the seal. Inside was a handwritten letter on my grandmother's personal stationery, and beneath it, a small digital voice recorder with a note taped to it. "Press play. I've queued up the important parts. Love, Grandma." The letter read, "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, then my suspicions were correct and my son has attempted to remove you from my trust. I'm writing this in my right mind, fully aware of what I'm doing and why. 3 months ago, during my recovery from pneumonia, you visited me every single day. You brought me books. You read to me. You helped me bathe when I was too weak to do it myself. You never asked me about the estate. You never asked me about money. You just loved me. Your father visited twice. Both times, he spent 20 minutes asking about my will. Melissa came once and took photos for Instagram. Your mother called to see if I needed anything, but never actually came. I'm leaving you the Martha's Vineyard house because you're the only one who loved that place the way your grandfather did. You're the only one who remembers the stories. You're the only one who sees it as a home instead of an asset. But I knew they would fight this. I knew Richard would try to find a way around my wishes. So I started recording. I started documenting. Not because I'm paranoid, but because I'm experienced. I know my own son. These recordings are yours to use as you see fit. I'm giving them to you not to hurt your father, but to protect you. Because the truth is your shield, Sarah. And they've been lying for so long, I don't think they remember what truth sounds like anymore. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry I didn't protect you from them sooner. Grandma Eleanor. I had to stop reading because my vision blurred. With tears. Patricia handed me a tissue without comment. The voice recorder was an older model, the kind with actual buttons instead of touchscreen. I pressed play. My father's voice filled the small room, tinny but clear. Mother, we need to talk about Sarah. I'm worried about her mental state. She's been acting very strangely lately, paranoid, emotional. I think the responsibility of being co-trustee might be too much for her. Have you considered appointing Melissa instead? Someone more stable? Grandmother's response was careful. Sarah has been nothing but helpful to me, Richard. What specifically concerns you about her mental state? She's isolating herself. She's not attending family functions. She seems depressed. I've spoken to several doctors who agree that someone in her condition shouldn't be handling complex financial decisions. What doctors? Has Sarah been seeing someone? A pause. Then, well, not formally. But the symptoms are clear. Mother, I'm trying to protect you. If Sarah makes poor decisions with the trust, we could all suffer. Better to make the change now, while we can do it smoothly. The recording continued. 14 calls over 3 months, each one building the same narrative. Sarah is unstable. Sarah is depressed. Sarah is paranoid. Sarah needs to be removed. My father repeated these claims so many times, I could hear him believing his own lies. Then came Melissa's voice from an in-person visit. The date stamp showed it was 2 weeks ago. Grandma, I need to be honest with you about something. Sarah has been calling me at weird hours, saying strange things. She's convinced everyone is against her. She keeps asking about your will, about the house. I'm worried she's planning something. Have you noticed her behavior getting worse? Grandmother's voice was steady. Actually, Sarah hasn't mentioned the will to me once. You're the third person this week to suggest there's something wrong with her. Why is everyone so concerned all of a sudden? Because we care about you, Grandma. And we care about her. We just think maybe she's not in the right headspace to be handling important decisions, especially regarding the Martha's Vineyard house. That property is valuable, and Sarah might make emotional choices that aren't in your best interest. Or choices that aren't in your interest. Silence. Then Melissa's voice, colder. I don't know what you mean by that. I mean the house. You've already told your designer friends you're planning to renovate it. You've already picked out furniture. How do you plan to renovate a house you don't own? I just assumed. Dad said. Your father assumed wrong. I'm leaving that house to Sarah. Another pause. Then, Grandma, are you sure that's wise, given her current mental state? The recording clicked off. Patricia let out a low whistle. They coordinated. Your father and Melissa created a unified narrative about your mental health, repeated it enough times that even they started believing it. I pressed play again. This recording was from 3 weeks ago, my Aunt Linda's voice. Eleanor, I love you, but I have to say this. Choosing Sarah as co-trustee over Richard is going to cause family problems. Richard has the business experience. Sarah has always been difficult. She doesn't get along with people. She has issues with authority. And lately she's been showing signs of real instability. What signs? Richard told me she's been having panic attacks, She's not sleeping. She's making paranoid accusations. Eleanor, I know you want to be fair, but sometimes fairness means recognizing when someone isn't capable. For Sarah's own good, you should reconsider. For Sarah's own good, grandmother repeated. Or for Richard's wallet. That's not fair. We're trying to protect you. From my own granddaughter who visits me every day, while you haven't visited me in 6 months? The line went dead. Linda had hung up. There were more recordings. Uncle Thomas, suggesting I needed professional help. A family friend I barely knew saying I'd been acting strange at the grocery store. My mother's voice, weak and conflicted. Eleanor, I don't know what to think anymore. Richard says Sarah is having serious problems, but she seems fine to me. But he's so convinced, and he's her father, he would know, wouldn't he? Maybe I'm just not seeing it. Maybe I'm too close. Should I have her evaluated? Richard thinks we should have her evaluated. By whom? Grandmother asked. He knows a doctor, someone who specializes in this sort of thing. Someone who would give Richard the diagnosis he wants? Eleanor, that's a terrible thing to say. Barbara, when is the last time you formed your own opinion about one of your daughters without asking Richard what you should think? My mother had no answer. I turned off the recorder. Patricia was taking notes, her expression grim. This is premeditation. This is conspiracy. They spent 3 months building a false narrative, coordinating their stories, planting seeds with multiple witnesses. If they'd succeeded in getting you removed as co-trustee, they would have had a dozen people ready to testify that you were mentally unfit. They almost did succeed, I said. If grandmother hadn't been suspicious, if she hadn't recorded these conversations, if I hadn't shown up last night. But you did show up, and now we have documented proof that everything they said about you was fabricated. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Sarah, this goes beyond a family dispute. This is elder manipulation. They were trying to convince your grandmother that her own judgment was compromised. They were trying to make her doubt her decision to name you as co-trustee. In some states, that's financial abuse of a vulnerable adult. What do we do with this? Monday morning, we present it to the judge. We show that the emergency petition to remove you as co-trustee was based entirely on fabricated evidence. We show that your father coordinated a campaign to discredit you. We show that your grandmother, far from being confused or manipulated by you, was protecting herself from manipulation by them. I held the recorder in my hand. It was small, cheap plastic, the kind you could buy at any office supply store. But it contained the truth. 14 conversations that proved every accusation they'd made against me was a lie. There's more, Patricia said, pulling out her own phone. Rachel sent me the footage from last night. She filmed the entire ceremony attempt, including your father's speech about your mental health. I've had our paralegal create a side-by-side comparison. Your father's claims last night versus what he said in these recordings. The inconsistencies are devastating. She showed me the video on her laptop, split screen. On the left, my father at the country club. Sarah has been dealing with significant personal challenges. Depression, anxiety, instability. On the right, a recording from 5 weeks ago. Sarah is perfectly fine, Mother. I'm just concerned that the stress of being co-trustee might trigger something. Prevention is key. He changed his story, I said. Once he realized grandmother wasn't buying the instability narrative, he shifted to prevention. Protecting me from stress I hadn't experienced yet. Exactly. And that shift is evidence of fabrication. If you were genuinely mentally unstable, the story would be consistent. Instead, it evolved based on what he thought would work. Mrs. Chen knocked softly on the door. "I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a gentleman here asking about this safe deposit box. He says he's the primary account holder's son and he needs access." Patricia and I looked at each other. "Richard Thornton?" Patricia asked. "Yes. He says there's been a misunderstanding and he needs to retrieve some documents. Tell him the box is currently being accessed by the authorized party and will be secured when we're finished. Has no legal right to the contents. He's insisting quite strongly." Patricia stood up. "I'll handle this." I followed her out into the lobby. My father stood at the main counter, looking harried and desperate. He was still wearing the same suit from last night, though now it was rumpled. When he saw me, his face darkened. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" "Accessing grandmother's safe deposit box. What are you doing here?" "I need to retrieve some documents mother left here. Family documents. They're not yours to take." "Actually," Patricia said, stepping forward, "Sarah is specifically named on the access authorization. You are not. Whatever is in that box, your mother wanted Sarah to have it. This is ridiculous. I'm her son. I have power of attorney." "You have no power of attorney," Patricia corrected. "Your mother is of sound mind and competent to make her own decisions, and she decided Sarah should access this box, not you." My father's face was turning red. "Whatever is in there, whatever she told you, it's not the full story. Mother has been confused lately. She doesn't understand the complexity of the estate." "She understands perfectly," I said quietly. "She understood 3 months ago when you started calling her daily about changing the trust. She understood 2 months ago when Melissa suggested she wasn't thinking clearly. She understood last week when Linda said I was mentally unstable. She understood all of it. That's why she documented everything." The color drained from his face. "Documented? Every conversation, every manipulation attempt, every lie you told about me." I held up the recorder. "She recorded it all, Dad. And Monday morning, the judge is going to hear it." He stared at the recorder like it was a loaded gun. Then he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something I'd never seen in my father's face before. Fear. "Sarah, wait. We can work this out. Family should stay private. We don't need lawyers and courts and recordings. Let's just sit down and talk." "We're past talking," I said. "You had 3 months to talk to me. You chose to talk about me instead." Patricia and I walked past him. Behind us, I heard him call out, "You're making a mistake, Sarah. You don't know what you're doing. You're going to regret this." I didn't look back. I'd spent my whole life looking back at them, hoping they'd finally see me. Now I only looked forward, toward the courthouse, toward the truth, toward the moment when they'd finally face consequences for their actions. We secured the evidence in Patricia's office safe. The recordings were transcribed and time-stamped. The comparison video was rendered in high definition. The documentation was organized in 3 massive binders, each one a chapter in the story of my family's betrayal. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. Sunday stretched like a wound that wouldn't close. I spent most of it at Grandmother Eleanor's house, sitting at her kitchen table while Patricia prepared for tomorrow's hearing. The house phone rang every 20 minutes. We didn't answer. The doorbell rang 4 times. We didn't open the door. Through the front window, I watched my Uncle Thomas stand on the porch for 10 minutes, hands in his pockets, looking uncertain. He finally left a note wedged in the doorframe. "Eleanor, please call me. I didn't know what they were doing. I'm sorry." "Should we call him back?" I asked Grandmother. She was making tea, her hands steady. "Thomas has always been weak. He does whatever Richard tells him because it's easier than having his own opinion. But he's not malicious, not like the others." He was supposed to be on the trustee board with Dad and Melissa. Because Richard told him to be. Thomas would have signed whatever documents they put in front of him without reading them. She brought the tea to the table. That's almost worse than being actively malicious. At least Richard and Melissa know what they're doing. Thomas is just absent. My phone sat on the table between us, face down, but I could feel it buzzing periodically. I'd stopped checking the messages around noon. The voicemails had evolved from anger to bargaining to threats. My mother's latest message was pure guilt. "Sarah, your father had a panic attack this morning. His blood pressure is dangerously high. The doctor says the stress could trigger a heart attack. Is this what you want? To kill your own father?" Patricia had listened to that message and snorted. Classic manipulation. Make you responsible for his health crisis when he's the one who created the situation. But it was working. Even knowing it was manipulation, some part of me still felt the pull. The trained response of 32 years, keep the peace, don't make waves, protect the family harmony even if it means sacrificing yourself. "You're thinking about calling them," Grandmother Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. No. Yes. I don't know. I wrapped my hands around the warm teacup. Part of me knows this is right. Everything we're doing is justified. But another part keeps hearing my mother's voice saying I'm tearing the family apart. "You're not tearing anything apart, Sarah. You're revealing what was already broken. There's a difference." Patricia looked up from her laptop. The hardest part of family abuse cases is that the victims are conditioned to see their own defense as an attack. They've trained you to believe that protecting yourself is the same as hurting them. It's not. My father might actually have a heart attack. Then he should have thought about that before committing fraud, Patricia said bluntly. His health is not your responsibility. His choices are not your burden. You did not create this situation. A car pulled up outside. We all tensed. But it was just Rachel, arriving with grocery bags. She'd offered to stay with grandmother tonight, to make sure no one tried any late-night manipulation. When she came inside, she looked exhausted. "Your dad is losing it," she told me, unpacking vegetables. "He called my mom 3 times today demanding she tell you to drop this." My mom told him to fuck off, which I've literally never heard her say before. Now half the family isn't speaking to the other half. Cousin David's taking your side. Uncle Thomas is remaining neutral, which is his way of siding with your dad without having a spine about it. Aunt Linda is calling you a sociopath on Facebook. She's posting about this on Facebook. I felt sick. Oh yeah, vague posts about ungrateful children and mental illness in the family and praying for those who have lost their way. Everyone knows she's talking about you. Some people are buying it. But Sarah, a lot of people aren't. A lot of people are asking questions, like why you weren't invited to the party, why your name was removed from the seating chart, why your dad was so desperate to have a signing ceremony on a Saturday night. Patricia was already pulling up Facebook on her laptop. We'll screenshot all of these, more evidence of defamation. I watched as she scrolled through Aunt Linda's posts. Each one was carefully worded to avoid direct accusation while making the implications crystal clear. Some family members will do anything for money, even betray the people who love them. Praying for my niece who is being led astray by outside influences. Sometimes mental illness makes people act in ways that hurt everyone around them. Can we sue her for this? I asked. We can. But I'd rather use it to show the pattern. Look. Patricia pointed to the timestamps. These posts started 2 months ago, right around the time your father filed the emergency petition. She's been laying groundwork, creating a public narrative that supports your father's claims of instability. Grandmother Eleanor was reading over Patricia's shoulder. Linda always was Richard's attack dog. He points, she bites. The good news, Rachel said, pulling out her own phone, is that I've been screenshotting every nasty comment and every private message people have sent me trying to get dirt on you, including this one from Melissa. She showed us a text. I know Sarah is feeding you lies. What did she tell you about the trust? Is she trying to take the Martha's Vineyard house for herself? She's trying to make me look greedy, I said. Which is perfect, Patricia replied, because we have recordings of Melissa explicitly discussing how to get that house for herself. The projection is obvious. They're accusing you of exactly what they're doing. My grandmother's landline rang. We all stared at it. After 6 rings, the answering machine picked up. My father's voice filled the kitchen. Mother, I know you're there. I know Sarah has turned you against me. But I'm still your son. I'm still your family. Whatever she told you, whatever lies she's spreading, they're not true. I never tried to manipulate you. I only ever wanted to protect you. Please, call me back. We can fix this. We can make this right. Don't let her destroy our family. The message ended. Silence settled over the kitchen like snow. He believes it, I said. He actually believes he's the victim here. Of course he does, Grandmother said. People like Richard always believe their own stories. They have to. Otherwise, they'd have to face what they really are. Patricia checked her watch. It's 7 p.m. The hearing is at 9 tomorrow morning. We should go over the timeline one more time. Sarah, I need you to be prepared for what's going to happen in that courtroom. I'm prepared. I don't think you are. Patricia closed her laptop and looked at me directly. Tomorrow, your father's going to stand in front of a judge and argue that you're mentally unfit. He's going to have his lawyer present documentation of your alleged instability. He's going to make you sound dangerous, delusional, unstable. And even though we have evidence proving it's all fabricated, you're going to hear your own father describe you as someone who needs to be removed from responsibility for your own good and everyone else's safety. I know. No, you know intellectually. But when you hear it, when you watch him perform concern for you while actively trying to strip away your rights, it's going to hurt in ways you're not expecting. Because there's going to be a part of you that still hopes he'll stop. That he'll see you in that courtroom and remember you're his daughter and choose you over the money. He won't, I said. But my voice shook. No, he won't. And Melissa will be there too, backing him up, adding her own testimony about your mental state. Your mother might be there, crying, making it look like you've abandoned her. Aunt Linda will probably show up to testify about your erratic behavior. They're going to put on a show, Sarah, and you're going to have to sit there and take it until it's our turn to present evidence. How long will I have to sit there? Their attorney gets to present his case first. Probably an hour, maybe 90 minutes. You'll listen to your father describe all the ways you failed, all the ways you're unstable, all the ways removing you as co-trustee is the compassionate choice. You cannot react. You cannot cry. You cannot get angry. You have to be stone. I can do that. Can you? Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. Because if you cry, if you show emotion, they'll use it as evidence that you're unstable. If you look angry, they'll use it to claim you're dangerous. You have to be perfect, Sarah. Calm, collected, rational, while they dismantle you piece by piece in front of a judge. I thought about all the years of being invisible, all the practice I'd had at swallowing emotion, at making myself small, at not reacting even when I was being hurt. Maybe my family had been training me for this moment without knowing it. I can do it, I said again. This time, I believed it. Rachel pulled out a bottle of wine. Then, we're going to carb load and hydrate and get you to bed early. Because tomorrow, you're going to walk into that courthouse and show them what happens when the invisible person finally speaks. We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail. Patricia quizzed me on dates, on conversations, on specific wording from the recordings. She prepared me for the questions I'd be asked. She role-played the cross-examination, deliberately making her questions hostile and accusatory, so nothing tomorrow could surprise me. When did you first become concerned about your father's management of the trust? 3 months ago, when grandmother told me she'd named me co-trustee, and my father stopped speaking to me. But you still visited your grandmother regularly? Every day? Even though your father had stopped speaking to you? Yes. Why? Because I love my grandmother. My relationship with my father doesn't change that. Some might say you were manipulating a vulnerable, elderly woman. The recordings prove otherwise. Grandmother was concerned about being manipulated by my father. That's why she documented everything. Patricia nodded. Good. Keep your answers short. Don't explain more than you're asked. Don't get defensive. State facts only. By 10 p.m., I was exhausted. Rachel made up the guest room for me, but I couldn't imagine sleeping. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either the judge would see through my father's lies and dismiss his petition, or I'd watch my family successfully paint me as unfit and strip away the only role my grandmother had trusted me with. I lay in the dark, listening to the house settle around me. Downstairs, I could hear Patricia still typing, preparing last-minute documents. In the next room, Rachel was on her phone, probably documenting the evening's events the way she'd been, documenting everything. My phone was on the nightstand, finally silent. I picked it up, looked at the notifications I'd been ignoring. 278 text messages, 94 missed calls, 23 voicemails. I scrolled through the texts. Most were variations on the same themes. You're ungrateful. You're mentally ill. You're tearing the family apart. You're going to regret this. But there were a few that surprised me. Cousin David. I'm on your side. What Dad did was wrong. A college friend. I saw the Facebook posts. Want you to know I don't believe any of it. My high school English teacher. Your father called me asking about your mental state in high school. I told him you were one of the most stable students I ever taught. Stay strong. People were choosing sides. The family was fracturing along fault lines that had probably always been there, but were now impossible to ignore. At midnight, I finally fell asleep. I dreamed about the empty space in that family photo. But in the dream, I wasn't the one missing. They were. And I stood in the center, solid and visible, while they faded around me like ghosts who'd never been real at all. I woke at 6 a.m. to the smell of coffee and the sound of Patricia's voice on a phone call. Yes, we'll be there at 8:30. No, my client will not be accepting any settlement offers. We're proceeding to the hearing. It was Monday morning, the day of reckoning. The day my family would finally face the consequences of trying to erase me. I got up, got dressed, and prepared to become visible in ways they'd never wanted me to be. The Fairfield County Courthouse looked like every other government building. Gray stone, American flags, metal detectors at the entrance. Patricia, grandmother Eleanor, Rachel and I arrived at 8:30 a.m. The morning was cold, the kind of cold that makes you question if spring will ever actually come. We made it through security and up to the 3rd floor without incident. Family Law Division, Courtroom 3C. The hallway outside was lined with uncomfortable wooden benches, and sitting on those benches, like a jury I'd already been convicted by, was my entire family. My father saw me first. He stood up, his lawyer beside him, both of them in expensive suits. Melissa was there, dressed like she was attending a funeral, all black, tissue already in hand. My mother sat between them, her face puffy from crying. Aunt Linda, Uncle Thomas, and 3 cousins I barely knew completed the tableau. "Sarah," my father said. His voice carried down the hallway. "We need to talk before we go in there." "No, we don't," Patricia said firmly, guiding me forward. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Family to family, without lawyers. "Everything that needs to be said will be said in front of the judge," Patricia replied. My father's lawyer, a man named Gordon Peterson, who looked like he charged $500 an hour, stepped forward. "Miss Chen, surely we can discuss settlement options. This is a family matter. It doesn't need to become a public spectacle." It became a public spectacle the moment your client tried to have my client declared mentally incompetent based on fabricated evidence. That's a serious accusation. It's a factual statement. We have proof. Peterson's eyes narrowed. "What proof?" Patricia smiled. "You'll find out in about 20 minutes. We moved past them toward the courtroom doors. My mother stood up, reaching for me. "Sarah, please, your father's blood pressure is his own responsibility," I said. The words felt cruel, but necessary. He created this situation. He can deal with the consequences. You're killing him. You're killing this family. No, Mom. I'm finally refusing to die for it. The bailiff opened the courtroom doors. The Honorable Judge Margaret Keating presiding. All rise. We filed inside. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, more like a conference room with a judge's bench than the dramatic spaces from TV shows. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the seal of Connecticut mounted on the wall behind the bench. Judge Keating entered from a side door, a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. "Be seated," she said, her voice carrying natural authority. She looked at the paperwork in front of her. "We're here for an emergency hearing on the matter of the Eleanor Thornton Trust. Petitioner Richard Thornton is requesting the removal of co-trustee Sarah Thornton on grounds of mental incapacity and the appointment of a 3-person trustee board. Is the petitioner present?" My father's lawyer stood. "Yes, Your Honor. Gordon Peterson, representing Richard Thornton." "And the respondent?" Patricia rose. "Patricia Chen, representing Sarah Thornton, Your Honor. I'd also like to note that Eleanor Thornton, the trust's grantor, is present and wishes to address the court." Judge Keating looked up, surprise flickering across her face. "Mrs. Thornton is here?" "Yes, Your Honor." "Interesting. This petition claims Mrs. Thornton is in fragile health and unable to attend proceedings." Judge Keating looked at my grandmother, who sat straight-backed in her seat, looking more competent than half the lawyers in the room. "Mrs. Thornton, are you able to participate today?" Grandmother Eleanor stood. "I'm perfectly able, Your Honor. And I'd like to state for the record that I never authorized this petition. I was not informed it was being filed. And I do not want Sarah removed as co-trustee." The courtroom went completely silent. Even Peterson looked shocked. He turned to whisper urgently with my father, whose face had gone pale. Judge Keating removed her glasses. "Mr. Peterson, did you inform Mrs. Thornton about this hearing?" "Your Honor, we believed Mrs. Thornton was not of sound mind to make informed decisions. The petition was filed in her best interest." "That's not what I asked. Did you inform the grantor of this trust that you were filing an emergency petition to restructure it?" "No, Your Honor." "Why not?" Peterson straightened his tie. "Because we believed she was being unduly influenced by the respondent, Sarah Thornton. We felt informing her would compromise the integrity of the proceedings. You felt it was appropriate to restructure an elderly woman's trust without her knowledge or consent because you assumed she was being manipulated? Your Honor, if I may, you may not. Judge Keating's voice was ice. You may sit down while I review the actual petition, which I'm now reading with fresh eyes. The next 5 minutes were excruciating. The only sound was pages turning and Judge Keating's occasional hum of disapproval. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Peterson, your petition claims Sarah Thornton exhibits signs of severe depression, anxiety, paranoid ideation, and is unfit to manage fiduciary responsibilities. You cite witness statements from family members. You cite erratic behavior. You cite concerning conversations. But I don't see any actual medical evidence. No doctor's evaluation, no psychiatric assessment, no formal diagnosis. Your Honor, the family felt, I don't care what the family felt. This is a legal proceeding concerning a competent adult's mental fitness. Where is the medical evidence? We don't have formal medical evidence, Your Honor, but we have numerous witnesses who can testify to concerning behavior. Hearsay, Patricia said, standing. Your Honor, the petition is based entirely on hearsay from interested parties who benefit financially from Ms. Thornton's removal. There is no medical documentation because my client is not mentally ill. This is a fabricated claim designed to remove her from a position of legal authority she was granted by Mrs. Eleanor Thornton. Judge Keating leaned back in her chair. Ms. Chen, do you have evidence supporting that claim? Extensive evidence, Your Honor, including recordings of the petitioner and other family members coordinating this narrative over a 3-month period. We can demonstrate that every claim made in this petition is a deliberate falsehood created to manipulate the trust structure. Recordings, Peterson sputtered. Your Honor, I was not informed of any recordings. That's because we obtained them this weekend, Patricia said smoothly. Mrs. Eleanor Thornton, concerned about potential manipulation by her son, recorded her phone conversations with family members beginning 3 months ago. Those recordings prove that Richard Thornton, Melissa Thornton, and several other family members conspired to create a false narrative about Sarah Thornton's mental health in order to justify her removal as co-trustee. Judge Keating set down her papers. Mr. Peterson, did you know about these recordings? No, Your Honor. I was not informed. Did you independently verify any of the claims in this petition before filing it? Peterson hesitated. I relied on my client's representations. You relied on a financially interested party's unsubstantiated claims to file an emergency petition questioning someone's mental competence, without medical evidence, without informing the trust's grantor, without verifying the facts. Judge Keating's voice was dangerously quiet. Mr. Peterson, I'm going to give you one chance to withdraw this petition before I impose sanctions. Your Honor, my client believes... I don't care what your client believes. I care about what your client can prove. Can you prove Sarah Thornton is mentally incompetent? Silence. Finally, Peterson said, Not with medical evidence. No, Your Honor. Then withdraw the petition. Your Honor, if we could just have our witnesses testify. To what? Their opinions? Their feelings? Their financially motivated concerns? Judge Keating shook her head. No. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to withdraw this petition. Then we're going to discuss whether Ms. Chen wants to pursue sanctions for filing a frivolous claim and defaming her client's mental health. But first, I want to hear these recordings. Patricia stepped forward with her laptop. Your Honor, we've prepared a compilation of the most relevant conversations. With your permission, I'd like to play them for the court. Judge Keating gestured to the bailiff. Set up the audio. For the next 20 minutes, my family's voices filled the courtroom. My father explaining to grandmother that I was unstable. Melissa suggesting I was paranoid. Aunt Linda claiming I was having panic attacks. Uncle Thomas agreeing that maybe I needed help. All of them coordinating, building the narrative, creating the justification for tonight's hearing. I watched my father as he listened to his own voice. Watched his face cycle through shock, denial, anger, and finally, a kind of hollow resignation. He'd forgotten the recordings existed, or maybe he'd never known grandmother was capable of such strategic thinking. Either way, his carefully constructed case was playing back to him in his own words. When the recordings ended, Judge Keating removed her glasses and rubbed her temples. I've been on this bench for 18 years. I've seen family disputes over money. I've seen ugly divorces. I've seen children trying to take advantage of elderly parents. But I don't think I've ever seen such a coordinated, deliberate campaign to declare a competent adult mentally unfit purely for financial gain. She looked at my father. "Mr. Thornton, stand up." My father rose, his lawyer beside him. They both looked like they wanted to melt through the floor. "You came into my courtroom with a petition claiming your daughter is mentally incompetent. You presented witness statements from family members, all repeating the same narrative. You asked me to remove your daughter from a position of trust your mother specifically granted her. And you did all of this without medical evidence, without informing your mother, and without, as these recordings clearly show, any factual basis for your claims. Do you understand how serious this is?" "Your Honor, I was trying to protect my mother." "No. You were trying to manipulate your mother's estate. And when she made it clear she wanted Sarah as co-trustee, you decided to remove Sarah instead of accepting your mother's wishes." Judge Keating's voice rose. "You slandered your own daughter's mental health. You convinced family members to support false claims. You filed legal documents based on lies, and you wasted this court's time with a frivolous emergency hearing." She looked at her clerk. "Mark this petition as withdrawn. Denied. Whatever puts it in the record as having no merit whatsoever." Then she turned to Patricia. "Miss Chen, your client has grounds for a defamation suit. I would also support a petition for legal fees. This was a baseless claim from start to finish." "Thank you, Your Honor. We'll be filing accordingly." Judge Keating wasn't done. She looked at Grandmother Eleanor. "Mrs. Thornton, I want to be very clear. Your trust is your own. You have the right to name whomever you wish as trustee. You have the right to leave your property to whomever you choose. And anyone who tries to manipulate those decisions through legal maneuvering or defamation will face consequences in this court. Do I make myself clear?" "Very clear, Your Honor," Grandmother said. "Good." Judge Keating gathered her papers. "Mr. Thornton, you're free to pursue a legitimate challenge to your mother's trust decisions through proper legal channels. But if you ever file another emergency petition without medical evidence or without informing the interested parties, I will sanction you personally." Hearing dismissed. The gavel came down. The courtroom erupted immediately. My father was on his feet, gesturing frantically at his lawyer. Melissa was crying, real tears this time. Aunt Linda looked stunned, her narrative about my mental health shattered by the very evidence she'd helped create. Patricia gathered her materials, looking satisfied. That went better than expected. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we file for defamation. We file for legal fees. And we make sure that every lie they told about you is corrected on the public record." She looked at me. "You won, Sarah." But as I watched my father collapse onto the bench, his face in his hands, his perfect plan demolished in front of witnesses, I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt hollow, relieved, but hollow. Grandmother Eleanor took my hand. "Come on, let's go home." We left the courtroom together. Behind us, my family was fracturing into pieces, arguing among themselves, trying to figure out how their sure thing had fallen apart so completely. I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to. 3 weeks later, I stood in the empty living room of the Martha's Vineyard house, watching sunlight stream through windows that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean. The house my grandmother had left me. The house my father had assumed would be his. The house Melissa had already planned to renovate. It was exactly as my grandfather had left it. Slightly worn, comfortable, filled with books and photographs, and the kind of furniture that gets better with age instead of worse. Nothing like the cold, perfect spaces my family preferred. Grandmother Eleanor sat in her favorite chair by the window, the one she'd sat in every summer of my childhood. "Your grandfather proposed to me right there," she said, pointing to the beach below. 1953. I was wearing a yellow sundress. He had sand in his hair. It was perfect. "Why did you leave this to me?" I asked. Not challenging, just curious. "Because you're the only one who remembers him. The only one who asks about the stories. When you were 10, you asked me to tell you about every single photograph on these walls. You wanted to know who everyone was, how they were related, what their lives were like. Your father walked through this house seeing dollar signs. Melissa walked through seeing renovation potential. You walked through seeing family." I looked at the photographs. Generations of Thorntons, going back to the 1920s when my great-great-grandparents first bought this place. They're never going to forgive me for this. No, they won't. But Sarah, they were never going to accept you anyway. The moment you became visible, the moment you stopped accepting the role they assigned you, you became the enemy. Better to be a visible enemy than an invisible victim. My phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "You're not going to believe this. Melissa filed for divorce. Apparently, her surgeon husband found out about the attempted trust fraud and decided being married to a schemer wasn't good for his reputation. She's moving back in with your parents." I showed the text to grandmother. She smiled grimly. "The consequences are catching up to them. What about Dad? Your father is a proud man. He'll never admit he was wrong. He'll rewrite the story in his head until he believes he was the victim. That's what people like him do." She paused. "But I've already changed my will again. Everything now goes directly to you and Rachel. The house, the investments, the insurance. Richard gets his trust fund, which he can't touch until I die, and not a penny more. Melissa gets the same. Enough to survive, but not enough to live the lifestyle she thinks she deserves. They'll contest it. Let them. I've had 3 different doctors evaluate me. I've had attorneys document my competence. I've made video recordings explaining my decisions in my own words. They can contest all they want. They won't win." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the waves. This was the relationship my family had tried to destroy. A grandmother and granddaughter who actually liked each other, who didn't need wealth or status or performance. Just love. "What will you do with the house?" grandmother asked. "Live in it. During summers, at least. Maybe rent it out the rest of the year. Keep it the way grandfather wanted it." I looked around at the worn furniture, the faded curtains, the perfectly imperfect space. Not renovated into something Instagram-worthy. Good. She reached over and squeezed my hand. "You know what the best part of all this is?" "What?" "They spent 3 months trying to prove you were mentally unstable. They called in favors, coordinated stories, built an entire case. And in the end, the only thing they proved was that they were the unstable ones. You walked into that courtroom calm, prepared, and sane. They walked in with lies and manipulation. The judge saw exactly what you were, the only mentally healthy person in the family. My phone buzzed again. This time, my mother. "Your father had another panic attack today. The doctor put him on medication. I hope you're happy." I typed back, "I hope he gets the help he needs, but his health is not my responsibility." I sent it before I could second-guess myself. 3 weeks ago, that message would have been impossible. 3 weeks ago, I would have called, apologized, offered to help, sacrificed myself on the altar of family peace. Now I understood that peace bought with self-erasure isn't peace at all. It's just organized silence. "She'll keep trying," Grandmother said, watching me put down the phone. "Your mother will keep guilt-tripping you, trying to pull you back in. The question is whether you'll let her." "No," I said. "I won't." "Good. Because, Sarah, I need you to understand something. When I'm gone, don't look at me like that. I'm 85. It's coming. When I'm gone, they're going to escalate. They're going to try to prove undue influence. They're going to claim you manipulated me. They're going to drag you through court one more time." "I know. And you'll have all the documentation to prove otherwise. The recordings, the medical evaluations, the witness testimony. But it's still going to hurt. Because they're going to stand in front of a judge and say terrible things about you. And this time, I won't be there to defend you." "You're defending me right now," I said. "By leaving a paper trail they can't dispute. By documenting everything, by making sure the truth is undeniable." "Smart girl," she smiled. "You've learned how they operate. You've learned to beat them at their own game." We stayed at the house for 3 days. We walked on the beach. We cooked in the old kitchen. We sat on the porch and watched storms roll in over the ocean. We didn't talk about the family. We didn't need to. On the last evening, as we packed to head back to Connecticut, Grandmother handed me a key. The safe deposit box at the Martha's Vineyard Credit Union. There's one more thing in there. Letters I wrote. One for you, one for Rachel, to be opened after I die, and one for your father. What does it say? The truth. Everything I never had the courage to say to his face. Everything I should have said years ago when I first saw who he was becoming. Maybe it won't change anything. Probably it won't. But at least he'll know that I saw him, that I understood exactly what he did and why. Grandmother, I'm not dead yet, child. Don't look so mournful. I plan to stick around long enough to watch you enjoy this house for at least a few more summers. She patted my cheek. But I sleep better knowing everything is in order. That when I go, you'll be protected. That's all any parent wants, really. To know their child will be safe. You're more of a parent to me than either of my actual parents. I know, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I'm sorry I let Richard treat you the way he did. I'm sorry I didn't stop it. You stopped it when it mattered most. We locked up the house and drove back to reality. But the house would be waiting. A sanctuary. A legacy. A place where the stories were real and the love was genuine and no one had to perform or compete or erase themselves to belong. That was the thing my family never understood. They fought over property and status and image, mistaking those things for value. But the real inheritance wasn't the house or the money or the trust fund. It was knowing who you were, knowing what you stood for, knowing that some relationships are worth fighting for and others are worth walking away from. I'd spent 32 years trying to earn their love by making myself smaller. It took one night of making myself visible to understand that their love was never available anyway. They didn't want a daughter. They wanted a prop. As we drove across the bridge away from Martha's Vineyard, I looked back one more time at the island, at the house sitting on the hill overlooking the ocean. My house now. The place I'd be able to breathe. Grandmother Eleanor was asleep in the passenger seat, her head tilted against the window. Rachel was in the back, scrolling through her phone, probably documenting something else for the ever-growing evidence file we kept just in case. My phone buzzed with another text from my mother. "Dinner tonight, just us. No lawyers, no drama. I miss you." I read it, thought about it, then put the phone in the cup holder without responding. Maybe someday I'd have dinner with her. Maybe someday I'd be able to sit across from her without feeling the weight of every time she chose silence over protection. Maybe someday I'd forgive her for being an enabler. But not today. Today I was too busy being visible, too busy being whole, too busy being the person my family had tried so hard to erase. I was left out of their biggest moment. They tried to delete me from the family narrative. They attempted to declare me mentally unfit and strip away the only role that mattered. But what happened next didn't blow anyone's mind except theirs. I simply refused to disappear. I stood up. I spoke the truth. I brought the receipts. And in the end, the biggest moment wasn't theirs anymore. It was mine. The moment I realized I didn't need their approval, didn't need their inclusion, didn't need their version of family. I had the beach house. I had my grandmother. I had the truth. I had my dignity. They could keep everything else.